Hello my brethren, I hope you're all well. I want to talk in this video about the man who lost everything and was left alone to collect his broken pieces and put them back together. And I want to dedicate this video to a friend of mine who has recently stopped seeing with me eye to eye. In my latest video I spoke about accountability, and I did not address the man who, without malice, with no concern over himself, stood by his family's side until his wife deserted him. I did not talk about the man whose mother sexually molested him. I did not talk about the man who found his girlfriend in bed with another man. I did not talk about the man whose wife, ex-wife, girlfriend or fiancé still vindictively abuses and harasses him despite him walking away. I did not talk about the man whose children were taken away from him. I did not talk about the man who never met his father. I did not talk about the man who had to stand tall as a protector and provider for his family from the moment that he was born. The male of our species is the one that sacrifices time, effort, and even life. Men live a pretty much solitary existence, even in the homes that they have built. They sit quietly alone in the corner, watching their effort in the shape of material goods and growing children. But all men, they are alone. Though this never used to be the case, though our friendships never used to be so shallow, though our words used to be like contracts, it is no longer so. A lot of things have changed for the male of today. The man is left to deal with his own shit. His peace is obstructed by constant cries and demands. He needs to fulfill a role, a task, and an act. Everything seems to be his responsibility, and despite all of his efforts, it is never enough. One man cannot possibly do everything, but the princesses in the home demand more and resent the man that doesn't do and provide everything. And between all of his awakened hours, there is hardly any time for him. Women, they think they have it difficult, being a mother, birthing children, and raising them. And I mean, it's difficult. For the most part, parenthood, it is very difficult. But they don't understand that they're living their dream. The man acts as a servant to their dreams. The house he paid for is not his. The children he fathered are not his. His time is not his, and the money is not his. And despite him living in essence her dream, he's not appreciated. Not even he appreciates himself. His whole gender is even ridiculed. On television, newspaper, and social media, men are portrayed as the unevolved animals of yesterday, unnecessary in this newfound feminist and politically correct world. Through the abuse, the ridicule, the attack on his salary, his home, and his children, the man simply shuts down. He turns everything off. He becomes a robot of repeated actions with no aim other than to please the woman or to keep at least in his mind some quietness. Men who can't do that, they simply check out. They walk away, or they simply end their suffering without the society batting an eyelid. So what is this stoic man, this soft and malleable robot, to do when everything he considered worthy and gave him pride is taken away from him? It could be something small, a car, a book collection, a stamp collection, or something big. It could be his children, his home, and all his acquired wealth over years and years of service. What will a man who had his manhood ripped out of him to do when there is nothing more to hope for? You see, for a lot of the men, their choice of whether they want to continue living or dying is very simple. It is as simple as the choice between having something that's worth living for and having absolutely nothing. And men, they live the closest to nothing than they have ever lived before. Men in the past, they were self-made, it was a time of growth. Now we're living the decline. So if one thing failed, there was always something else to do. There was always another project that you could do. Now everything that was once big and worthy has minimized to the point that all we care for is a book collection, a stamp collection, an anime collection, or a gaming console, a Steam account, whatever. Beyond this scope, there is his life's work, his home, his children, his money. If married or single, they can all be taken at the whim of a female. And for a lot of the men, all of these have been taken at a whim. They have been destroyed at a whim. Men now, they look at their children who don't recognize them. There is an epidemic of single fathers who eagerly want to see their children and are not allowed to. They're not allowed to get involved in their lives of their own children. When in our history was that the case before? When as a species have we shown that parenthood is only the job of a female? Yet the current legal system only supports this. Men, they look at their children and are trying to suck in all the changes that have occurred in their absence. They try in these few brief hours that some, the lucky ones, have to help them and guide them. So when all these things are taken away, what has a man to do? If everything you love in your life is lost, life itself is lost. Look at the suicide rates. They're staggering. This might be the only area that we are winning. And by winning, it means that we are dying. And we are dying at rates that any civilized society should be alarmed with. And people are not only dying physically, they're dying psychologically. I see men throughout both the clinic and outside that clinic who have been heartbroken, and all the magic is gone. Their only reasons to live are taken away, yet they don't have it in them to take that last step. So they choose to die. Emotionally, they become colder, number, indifferent, and distant. They feel they have nothing to say anymore, and there is nothing left to take. Everything that they love has been taken away from them. Yet society refuses to see this. The women refuse to accept this, and men, they keep on suffering. I mean, look at the females in MGTOW, the groupies. They always have some deeper personal problem that they came here for. Their mother never allowed them to meet their father or whatever. They do it only because they have a reason to be here. Otherwise, this male suffering would have gone pretty much unobserved even for those females. And men, I mean other men, who are yet to suffer so deeply, they also don't see this suffering. They're too focused on finding some pleasure in themselves, some reasons to live. So that's their life goal in a society that hates and criminalizes the masculine. So what of these men, the men who have been ripped of everything and yet they still contain within them a beating heart? What of them? The programming, their rationalizations of what is deserving of masculinity, their overall stoicism, it makes them unable to experience anything. It makes them unable to feel. I'm not even sure if it's depression anymore. I know that the psychiatric community will label it as such, but I see it as a distinctly separate entity. Many of these men are unable to mourn, and they live a life wearing the indifferent mask. Many of the men live in constant mourning, constantly reminiscent of their lost lives and their lost triumphs. Many of the men move from mourning to depression, and they see their lives as not worth living. They become completely numb. There is no enjoyment in their lives, and they end up going on medication. How will we help these men? How does the truth help these men? Well, it doesn't. Though the truth may give you reasons as to why what happened to you happened, the bringing yourself out of the pit is again a male solidary activity. The empathy of society towards these men is non-existent. Look at the prime examples of broken men that we see around. Men who are unable to pull themselves out of their emotional and psychological holes. They're either in prison or they're homeless. If you want to speak to these men, buy them a coffee and a sandwich and sit with them in conversation. Their story will remind you, the majority of you at least, of your own stories. They have merely made a bad turn down their path to self-destruction, to emotional blunting, and to eventually psychological death. The only way to help these men is a change in perceptions. The truth, though not therapeutic, for a lot of us at least, it gives us understanding. And men, they started to understand other men. They started to feel the pain a lot more than they felt it before. When men started engaging with other men, it is striking for a lot of them how their stories are similar, how their stories are remarkably the same. A failed marriage, financial problems, mourning, depression, a drinking problem, and right about where you were not willing to give your abusers more of what they wanted from you, which was your eventual physical and psychological demise, they simply did not care. They looked in the mirror and they saw in themselves no worth in their eyes. They saw a self in the mirror that they did not recognize, understand, or comprehend. These men, they are our broken selves. They are ourselves before we picked the pieces of our broken selves and put it as much together as we could to be barely functional and survive. Sure, there is a few loose screws here and there. There's a couple of parts missing, but the majority of you watching this content, you're still around. They tried the same, but though the instructions were still in their head on how to do it, they simply did not want to. They simply did not care. And for those men, we help and we aid them with skills to survive, but you cannot help someone that sees himself as entirely worthless. There is nowhere to start. There is no basis. And how can you change their lives when the majority of the funds to help the people around are drained on feminine-related social projects, to ban men sitting like men in the trains and buses? In this system of misogyny and indifference, who is to help these men? We can certainly try, and a lot of men have already started trying, MIA projects. The mayor is also doing something remarkable. But as we know, in MGTOW the answer is not always money. In such a big problem, in a worldwide problem which affects all men of all ethnic groups, the problem is only solved with a change in perception. We have to reclaim our right to feel. We have to reclaim our right to live as independent and unique human beings, with no similarities to anyone else. We're not robots. We're not built simply for a function. We are the carriers of our DNA, but our life is not simply there to serve an evolutionary purpose. It is there to be lived and to be enjoyed. And we need to reclaim our right to be boys again, to enjoy and to live again. The Stoicism, it killed us. It keeps on killing us. Emotions are powerful. They can motivate you and they can crush you. And the emotions all the men are allowed to live nowadays are only negative and physical. There is no fulfillment in male life. We need to accept this part of us. We need to stop the feminist narrative that claims that we're just animals, that we're unevolved. We're human beings, for fuck's sake, and we feel the same, if not more, than all the females around us. But we need to enable ourselves to feel. We need to access that part of us. We need to let it out, and first to flood us, crush us, because it will. In a life where you only felt hate, the emotional repercussions of feeling again would be gigantic. But through the pain and through the suffering, the tears, the anger, comes the possibility for happiness, enjoyment, and pleasure. We need to start being ourselves again. We need to show the world that exists around us that we matter. Even if they don't give a shit, our thoughts, our truth, and our reality will play like a drum. It will echo through the laughter in subways. We will be changed men, renewed men with hopes and dreams again. We can create a spirit of acceptance and love for everything male and masculine. And all we did was learn these few simple truths. All we did was to allow ourselves to feel again. Mourn and grieve your losses, my brothers. Mourn and grieve your lives. Cry your pain and your suffering. Express your anger and frustration, and understand, though all of this is new for you, this is what human beings feel. This is what humanity is. A creature of an almost bipolar existence with ups and downs. And live and lead yourself to at least a tomorrow. Though I cannot predict whether the tomorrow is good or bad, the tomorrow is there. And you're waiting for it. You have hope, and you have a small dream, and you're no longer dead. Thank you for listening. This was Nico Chosky talking about all things man. Please like, share, and of course subscribe to my channel for more updates.